Hi, my name is Kristine Schütz-Flesson and I represent Diku, which is an agency under the Norwegian Ministry of Education and Research. Diku aims to strengthen the quality of Norwegian higher education and higher vocational education, but also to strengthen international cooperation and exchange throughout the education cycle. Research shows that teacher education programs are less internationalized compared to other educational programs. And within the European Union, there is a focus to internationalization of teacher education. So what is the situation like in Norway? The student exchange is small scale, but fortunately the situation in Norway is moving in a positive direction. Nevertheless, as the previous slide pointed at, international collaboration has great potential for improvement. As the teacher educators has less developed international network than their colleagues in other disciplines, there is little co-publishing among teacher educators, and English is rarely used as a teaching language, including the syllabus. This leads us to the program Noted. It is a permanent program financed by the Ministry of Education and Research. It was established in 2017 and provides support for educational collaboration and student exchange between teacher education institutions in Norway and abroad. So far, we have had 3 calls, and the next call is scheduled for 2021. The program has 1 overall aim and 3 objectives. The overall aim is to improve the quality of Norwegian teacher education and schools in Norway. The objective addresses student mobility through strategic partnership as a core element. All projects must include plans to increase student mobility, not only within the project period, but also in the longer term. And also staff mobility within the strategic partnership framework, and quality and internationalization of teacher education programs in Norway. So what have we learned so far? Well, from this rather brief period with Noted, we have made some reflections, and to sum up briefly, we see that the teacher training institutions have increased their interest in internationalization. The institutions are more active in applying to Diku's programs. The doors are opened for mobility for the students. Schools are involved in most projects, but it differs how active their roles are. And last but not least, the management must be involved to secure quality implementation. We will now turn to one of our exciting Noted projects, Canopy, the Canada-Norway Pedagogy Partnership for Innovation and Inclusion in Education. This is a partnership between Nord University in Norway, Queens University in Canada, and local schools in both regions. Together, they're working on a number of key areas in the field of education. Today, project members will provide you with an overview of the national and institutional context for one of their key focus areas, the indigenization of education. They will also offer details about the Canopy-project itself, its activities, its plans, its goals, and its challenges. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Morten Edvardsen and I am the head of Division for Teacher Education at Nord University and the project leader for Canopy. The Norwegian Ministry of Education and Research has called for a harmonization of pedagogy, practice and research in teacher education programs, emphasizing the imperative to incorporate more multicultural perspectives, diverse experiences and international research in both school classrooms and teacher training. Likewise, the Ontario Ministry of Training, Colleges and Universities in Canada has recently identified international education as a focus for both K-12 schools and higher education institutions. They are prioritizing a development of global competencies, a deeper understanding and appreciation of the international dimensions of study, and the need for students' exposure to different cultures and languages. Such Norwegian-Canadian synergies have not gone unnoticed. Both governments have targeted collaboration between the countries, especially in education and training, due to meaningful affinities in national approaches to gender equality, indigenous affairs, environmental responsibility, and human rights. These connections were a major motivation for us seeking a partnership in Canada. When searching for a suitable collaborator, we knew that we needed a partner with an excellent reputation, with a commitment to high-quality training and research in education, and with exceptional student satisfaction rates. Luckily, Queens University stood out to us immediately, and the fact that they were ranked number 1 in Canada for international students confirmed our initial impressions. We reached out to Queens and the local school boards, and we were met with great enthusiasm. We spent months designing this project together through regular communications. The partners uncovered shared national and institutional priorities and determined the guiding principles for the project: innovation and inclusion. From this framework, we performed a comparative assessment of program, research and training specializations to determine the Canopy priority areas. We selected 4 topics, each corresponding to a different year of the project, that would inform our collaboration work and our student placements. And these are educational leadership, digital innovation and educational technology, Indigenous studies, diversity and inclusion, and 4th, exceptional learners. The project is split into 2 strategic mobility groups, long-term and short-term. To explain a little bit in the beginning, the long-term mobility group, or the SEG, the Students Exchange Group, consists of teacher education students who undertake semester and practicum exchanges with the partner universities, school board, and educational organizations. The aim for these longer stays was to enable our students to more fully immerse themselves in the educational environment of the partner region and to acquire international perspective on practice, teaching and learning that extends beyond their typical experience of local guidelines and curricula. On exchange, they can cultivate intercultural awareness, craft self-reflexive pedagogy, and assemble a broader network of colleagues and mentors. The short-term mobility group, otherwise called the CPG, the Canopy Partner Group, is really a unique feature of this project. Diku's call for projects with multiple levels of participants, and especially projects that incorporate students into all activities, was something that we took quite seriously when designing this project. We decided to create a special annually rotating 14-member collective with each country represented by 7 members per year. This includes 1 representative from university leadership, 2 academic faculty, 1 local school teacher or a school leader, such as a superintendent or a principal, and 3 teacher education students. A project with this kind of holistic approach, gathering participants from so many different ranks and positions, is less common in international projects. But we see a lot of value in including such diverse perspectives. These CPG members are selected based on their expertise in the project theme that year. The plan for the group is that they meet in person twice a year, 1 week in Canada and 1 week in Norway. During these visits, the 14 members convene for their own 2-3-day focus seminar that identifies important synergies between members, but they also attend larger adjacent conference events, tour local schools and regional organizations, meet with relevant researchers or government officials, and participate in relevant training. So while these are short-term visits, the aim is that they will foster longer-term collaboration. Outside of these meetings, the CPG continues their contact throughout the year, exploring opportunities for research clusters, dissemination work, funding applications, guest lecture, and so on. Between these two groups, we have 68 people participating in strategic mobility, 36 whom are students, so this is a huge boost for our own international aims, as well as larger government initiatives to bring Canada and Norway closer together. The project began in January 2020 with the first week-long meeting of the CPG in Kingston, Ontario. We held our partnership seminar, during which each member gave a presentation about the specialization in the theme of educational leadership, and we engaged in many fruitful discussions. The group also attended the Queens Conference of Education, which was concurrently being held on campus that week. Additionally, we toured the university, spent an afternoon of the Calvin Park School, led by the principal there, met with the Ontario Principal Council in Toronto, and hosted student engagement events. The first project week also included a meaningful inauguration. Line B. Lønnum from the Norwegian Embassy in Canada attended talks, gave a presentation, and led a roundtable with our group. We sincerely appreciated the enthusiastic support from the Norwegian government. Her visit not only energized our work together, but it also emphasized to the public the importance and legitimacy of international collaboration in the field of education.
Hello, everyone. I am so delighted that Queens was invited to be part of this Canopy-project. We had our first and so far only face-to-face gathering in Kingston last January. In our initial caucus session, I realized that the decision to invite faculty administrators and researchers, graduate students, teacher candidates, and school leaders from Canada and Norway was a very important ingredient to Canopy's success. Everyone cared about and was engaged in important educational issues. The conversation was lively, and the presentations informed the topics of discussion. Presentations from students were as strong as those from faculty members, and they were treated just as seriously. Everyone had important contributions to make. I came away from those few days convinced that in much of our previous partnership initiatives, we had been missing opportunities by not inviting educational thinkers from a diversity of roles, ages, and backgrounds to come together to discuss ideas and possibilities. This arrangement with NORD felt unique and important, and much more in line with our faculty's goals to work equitably and ethically within an ethos of social responsibility. One of our teacher candidates remarked to us later that it was the first time she had felt her academic work had been treated so seriously, and where she had felt like an equal contributor to the discussion. She not only felt included, but she was part of the team. One of the critical topics we discussed during those days was Indigenous education. Reconciliation with Indigenous peoples is not just a pressing issue in North America, but in many countries around the world. I learned from our NORD partners that Norway too has concerns about the treatment and education of Indigenous peoples in their country. Reconciliation demands facing and changing a deeply embedded approach of systemic racism and genocide. As we have learned in our faculty, while this work is urgent and needs to move forward as quickly as possible, the challenge of these systemic practices and beliefs will take time to eradicate, perhaps even a generation or two. But the need to keep working towards it steadily is critical. being able to exchange ideas with partners who come from another country and have an outside view that is informed by similar societal challenges is very important for the creation of a critical lens that can be brought to this work. We learn together how education can develop and promote practices of reconciliation, and how we as educators can ensure that our students learn not only the history of these terrible practices, but also about Indigenous ways of being and knowing, so that respect develops and enriches everyone's lives and learning.
I speak to you today from Norway University, which is located in the heart of the Sami, the geographical area of the Sami languages. Lule Sami, Pite Sami, Ume Sami and South Sami. As Dean Lou Kapler indicated, the indigenization of educational is part of crucial reconciliation work, and therefore it is immensely important to Canopy. This topic will serve as the main theme in the third year of the project, though it will continue to have relevance to our other project years. To understand how and why we are prioritizing the indigenization of education, it is essential to share how Canada and Norway have parallel experience in the treatment of indigenous peoples and education. In the next part of this video, you will hear about the national, provincial and institutional context behind our approach to indigenization.
Hello everyone, we are situated in the middle of Norway and deep into the traditional South Sami territory. In 2017, the Norwegian Parliament ordered the establishment of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, officially named the Commission to investigate the Norwegianization policy and injustice against the Sami and Norwegian Finnish peoples. This is a way of the official Norwegian society to acknowledge the injustice done during the period of the so-called Norwegianization to the Sami peoples and to the minority of the Norwegian Finns. Following inspiration from similar commissions in other countries, the Commission is instructed to investigate the Norwegianization policy and its effects, as this has been experienced by the Sami and the Kven or Norwegian Finn societies themselves. The Commission is also to consider how the Norwegianization policy has affected the majority population's attitudes towards the Finns and towards the Sami. The Commission will investigate the consequences of the Norwegianization policy up until the present day. It is stressed in the mandate that the investigation shall have a forward-looking perspective, and thus it shall lay the foundation of a continued reconciliation. In gathering material, the Commission invites anybody who regards themselves afflicted to send in reports and narratives. The Commission also sends personnel skilled in interviewing techniques and in languages to carry out interviews of relevant persons. And thirdly, the Commission arrange public meetings open to all. Any organization or institution may invite the Commission to, for instance, festivals or seminars. The Commission includes 11 experts, all of whom have been appointed by the Norwegian Parliament. These experts come from different backgrounds. We have experienced politicians, scholars of history, of law, or languages, and also representatives of the Norwegian State Church. As well may be expected, questions of representation in the Commission has been debated. For instance, it has been criticized that the South Sami do not have any representatives in the Commission. From the perspective of the Commission, however, the members of the committee do not represent any group. They are chosen due to their personal competence. The Commission shall complete its work by September 1st, 2022. By that time, it shall deliver its report to the Presidium of the Norwegian Parliament. Thank you.
Nord University has the national responsibility for Lule and South Sami language and culture in higher education, and we offer language courses on basic and advanced levels. Lule and South Sami are the two Sami languages in Norway and Sweden with the lowest number of first language speakers, and it is paramount that we recruit as many new teachers as possible. Our Sami teacher education programs are integrated with our other teacher education programs, and right now we are enhancing the Sami perspective in all our programs, both our Sami and non-Sami programs. The national framework plans are in fact quite similar, and all teacher education programs in Norway qualify the students to provide instruction in Sami affairs, including knowledge of the status of indigenous peoples all over the world, and safeguarding Sami pupils' right to education in accordance with the Education Act and the current national curriculum for primary and secondary education. Important in this context is the fact that a new national curriculum were in fact implemented this year. In the new curriculum, knowledge about the Sami population is given higher priority than before. It states that Sami cultural heritage is part of Norway's cultural heritage. Through the teaching and training, the pupils shall gain insight into the indigenous Sami people's history, culture, societal life, and rights. The pupils shall learn about diversity and variation in Sami cultural and societal life. In fact, the new curriculum is a long step towards indigenization of basic education in Norway. Consequently, it is our obligation now that all our teacher students get a high competence concerning Sami culture, history, and, not least, the Sami language. And as we are centrally located in the South Sami land, we normally start by introducing our local Sami culture. On campus, we strive to make our Sami commitment visible through Sami signboards, name of lecture halls, and even a Sami turf hut built by one of our South Sami partners from the reindeer herding district right across the fjord, Jon Christian Joma. The South and Lule Sami languages were on the brink of extinction as a result of the assimilation policies of the Nordic national states for 150 years. This policy changed 40 years ago, and a revitalization process was started. The challenge remains how to educate enough Sami language teachers. Scholarships granted by the Sami Parliament is one measure, but there are others. And we need to start in the kindergartens. There are also too few kindergarten teachers in the Sami kindergartens and preschools. Therefore, I'm happy to say that Nord University will start a Lule and South Sami education for preschool teachers next fall.
Boris, hi. My name is Sandra Nysterake, and I teach Lule Sami language subjects at Nord, and I research Sami language education in Norway. When we speak about indigenizing teacher education, you could say that the work is twofold, as we have both a Sami and a national teacher education program. As Asbjørn mentioned, our national teacher education, we have to ensure that all our students are educated about the Sami, their culture, history, society, and rights. And this is because in the new curriculum, every single school subject has some explicit Sami learning outcomes. And then we have the Sami teacher education program, where we focus not only on knowledge about the Sami, but we also have to ensure that the whole program is rooted in Sami languages, culture, history, and traditions, and that indigenous knowledge, ways of learning and teaching are a central part. As of today, I would say we are not quite there yet. Indigenizing education is an ongoing process, and even though we have a lot left to do, we have also made some good progress. For instance, every February, in the context of the Sami National Day, we arrange Sami Week at the university. It's an immersive program dedicated to covering core Sami perspectives for teacher education. In the long run, the goal is for these Sami perspectives to be more integrated, more fully into the teacher training as a whole. This fall, the faculty also arranged a working group to investigate how to more thoroughly integrate Sami perspectives in all our programs, both Sami and non-Sami programs, to make these larger systemic changes. A central challenge when indigenizing education is a lack of resources. Our colleagues at Queens address funding as their biggest challenge. For us, since NOR recently got increased funding for this work, our challenge is actually human resources. Not only trying to recruit as many teachers as we can to keep active the Lula and South Sami language, but also assembling enough Lula and South Sami teacher educators to train these teachers.
My name is Lars Kirksofaro, and I'm the Vice Dean of Research in the Faculty of Education and Arts at Norway University. You already heard about some of our Indigenous programs and events here at the university, but I want to speak briefly about our research profile. Research-based teacher education is the foundation for the training we provide our students. As such, active and internationally engaged research on Sami language, culture and indigenous education is a priority, one that appears quite explicitly across all our strategy documents. Our faculty is proud to be home to the Sami Research Group, as well as the Research Group for Social Justice and Diversity in Education. Many of our faculty members are currently leading regionally and nationally funded projects, such as the Supporting Language Learners in South Sami Language Project, the Administration and Dissemination of Sami Traditional Knowledge Project, the Spoken Lulu Sami Documentation Project, and the South Sami Ethnobotany Project, among many others. Thank you very much.
I am Rebecca Luce Kapler, Dean of the Faculty of Education at Queens University, which is situated on the territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. At the time I was appointed Dean in 2015, Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission made public its report on the history and legacy of residential schools that had existed for more than 120 years in Canada. Chaired by Justice Murray Sinclair, the report was a detailed account of what happened to Indigenous children who were physically and sexually abused in government boarding schools, where an estimated 3,200 children died from tuberculosis, malnutrition, and other diseases resulting from poor living conditions. The Truth and Reconciliation Report announced 94 calls to action, many of them directed to educators and educational institutions. I determined that one of my highest goals as Dean would be for us as a faculty to begin to answer those calls to action. Today, you will hear from two of our Indigenous colleagues, Lindsay Morecambe and Liv Rondeau, about some of this work.
On a national level, Canada is signatory to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. We weren't originally. Canada was one of 4 countries, along with the United States, New Zealand, and Australia, that originally refused to sign. We adopted it in 2010, but it's still pursuant to national laws, including the Indian Act. Recently, the Trudeau government, upon their most recent election, promised that they would bring UNDRIP in full, but we have yet to see the results of that. Education in Canada is run by the provinces, and on a provincial level in Ontario, which is the province where we live, we have an Indigenous education strategy. The original policy document for that dates to 2007. There are various documents that came out after several high-level meetings in 2007, including the FNMI Education Policy Framework, and another document, Building Bridges to Success for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Students, which is with respect to self-identification in provincial schools. The previous government, run by Kathleen Wynne, was a Liberal government, and they followed up from 2007 with several progress reports, the most recent of which was in March of 2018. Most of the developments following 2007 did relate directly to the TRC, particularly those after the release of the TRC documents in 2015. At that time, the government promised that there would be a new relationship with First Nations schools. They signed community agreements, partnerships, and MOUs with Indigenous organizations. They developed the requirement for board action plans, implemented the positions of Indigenous education leads in every board, full-time positions. They implemented Indigenous education advisory councils, increased an emphasis on safe self-identification, created the Indigenous Languages Fund, which is a short-term fund that funds projects on a grant basis. They expanded Indigenous early years education, and they began the development of curriculum. There's still a lot of work to do, and unfortunately, since our last election in 2018, we haven't seen great developments. Doug Ford's Conservative government took over. At that time, the development of a curriculum that was supposed to occur was abruptly cancelled to the point where people had already arrived in Toronto and were sent home. There has been very little with respect to consultations in response to the TRC. There were significant cuts to the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs. It was renamed from the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation, and it was put under the portfolio of the Minister of Energy, Mines and Northern Development, which is indicative of the priorities of this particular government. Board level responses have been more positive. We've seen really good developments in many school boards. There have been releases of revised FNMI studies curricula. All boards have an Indigenous education portfolio. The roles differ across boards, but we've seen a great deal more professional development for teachers, but a lot more is needed. We've also seen increased community partnerships in many areas.
I was looking this morning at the Beyond 94, which cbc.ca put out, and I was looking under the section of education. And this is a really great resource because it shows you exactly, it breaks down the TRC's calls to action, so all 94 of them. It also talks about under each section what's not been started, what's in progress, projects that are underway, and things that are completed. And it's quite upsetting actually to see that only 10 of them have been completed. And I would arguably say it was like 10 of the easiest things to implement. And the larger scale things really are either not started or they're just proposed projects at this point. So where I think our Faculty of Education and the Aboriginal Teacher Education Program is really fostering the TRC and promoting these important initiatives is exactly what Lindsay said, working with communities to build education for members of the community and for Indigenous student success. So our program partners with 3 Aboriginal communities. Currently, right now, we have one in Manitoulin North Shore. We're working to have one in Mushkegowuk Territory, and excitingly, we also might be opening another one in the Tyendinaga Mohawk Territory. So it's really great to be able to partner with Aboriginal communities because you really get a sense of community in those programs. It's also led by primarily Indigenous people, and the education that the students are receiving in that is Indigenous led, it's Indigenous focused, and we're creating teachers who are then going into the classroom and really promoting Indigenous student success, which is building that, I guess, bridging that gap between non-Indigenous and Indigenous students so that we're upping the graduation rates. We're making sure that students are receiving culturally responsive education. We're making sure as well that in the Faculty of Ed, we do a lot of work with, at least in the Kingston area, the Kingston Indigenous Languages Nest, which the policy framework that you talked about, Lindsay, I really see that coming to light in that project because self-identified Indigenous students, like the framework suggests, are being able to participate in Indigenous-led programming that really fosters a lot of culture and language and helps them see themselves represented in schools. So I think it's really important, the different work that we're doing here. In relation to our long-term goals and challenges, I think one of our biggest challenges, especially recently with the Ford government coming in, is funding and finding the funding to be able to do the initiatives and push ourselves that much more farther to be able to have maybe more community-based sites or do more things in schools. And of course, I believe Indigenous people should be compensated for the work that they're doing. So when we're inviting elders and community members in, I think it's really important that they're be able to be paid for their time and respected that way as well. So I think funding is a big challenge at this point for not just us, but a lot of people, especially with the new government. And that makes it difficult to propose long-term goals because you can't really plan when things are based on grants or things that aren't guaranteed year to year. So I think a long-term goal that I see as the new program coordinator is, like I said, I'd love to see more community-based sites, really being able to foster Indigenous education in all different areas of Ontario and the country, and not only just for our ATEP program, but for all ATEP/ITEP programs across the country, to be able to do that important work and really dig into learning that is rooted in Indigenous initiatives and understanding and knowledge. So it's land-based, it's language-based, it's cultural-based, it's all of the things that are really important for Indigenous student success.
Hearing about these circumstances in both countries, I hope you can see some of same connections that we discovered through this partnership. These aligned contexts will lead our collaboration in the third year of Canopy, the Indigenous Studies, Diversity and Inclusion, thematic year, and they will inform our work throughout the project. Our long-term mobility in this third year is intended to immerse students into Indigenous communities and to expose them to their present concerns. For example, we plan for the practicum exchange students visiting Norway from Queens to take the placements in majority Indigenous schools and with local Sami cultural centers or organizations. On the other hand, the short-term mobility group that year will include researchers with interests ranging from Indigenous language revitalization to the dissemination of traditional Indigenous knowledge. Our student participants will be selected from the ATEP program at Queens and the Master in Lule and South Sami Teacher Education at Nord. This project year was initially scheduled for 2022, but it has been postponed until 2023 due to the coronavirus crisis. COVID-19 has temporarily halted our mobility activities, and this not ideal for a project that depends on mobility so centrally. But I think we have organized a number of practical responses to this challenge, seeing it as an opportunity for innovation rather than a chaos. For example, we had initially planned a short education conference at Nord in May. This was meant to be a concurrent event that our Canadian visitors could attend while in Bodø for the partnership seminar. But because it was cancelled, we were able to revisit this model and to consider other options. We had just attended the Queen's Conference of Education during our visit to Kingston in January and were inspired. This was an immensely popular event run entirely by teacher education students. Our Canopy students from Nord wondered whether they could take on to this kind of responsibility here. And so we connected Canopy's students from Nord with QCE committee members of Queens, who provided considerable guidance and training for organizing such an event. We now have time to let these Nord students plan a similar style conference, with aims to repeat it in subsequent years. And we hope to host a student-led event for Sami education as well. And I think that will contribute with great importance and bring value into our education. Likewise, while our Canopy research collaborations have moved online, we have used this crisis to inform our work together in the first project year. We have narrowed our focus to a consideration of educational leadership in crisis. This allows us to examine the current conditions, but also to contemplate the role and structure of educational management for a range of emergency situations. We also will attend to the influence of educational leadership on vulnerable populations, such as new immigrant and Indigenous communities during crisis. I want to turn now to another interesting instance of Canopy program that was derailed by the current crisis, but became a great opportunity for creative solutions.
What would you do if you had been selected to participate in an exciting project, the Canopy-project, halfway around the world? You have left Canada and you're on your way to Norway for this exchange. You're excited about discovering the new setting, an innovative education program or educational system, the Northern Lights, of course, and suddenly, as you're sauntering around Paris, waiting for the last leg of the journey to the Arctic Circle, you received an urgent message on your phone informing you that the exchange has been cancelled and you have to get on the next flight back home. Shock, confusion, and disappointment. This is what happened to Jenny Cui, whose international alternative practicum experience had been abruptly cancelled due to COVID-19. But was this a defeat or an opportunity for a little creativity? The Canopy partners on both sides of the Atlantic got together to discuss an alternative solution to the IAP and ended up supporting a virtual project where Jenny investigated an area of her choice and wrote up her findings in the form of an assignment, an article, under the supervision of a Noor University associate professor, me. This included meeting regularly on Zoom, brainstorming potential ideas for a project, allowing Jenny to make choices about her project, guiding Jenny in her interest, which focused on comparing innovation in education in the Ontario and Norwegian education systems, and where the pre-service teachers observed and experienced innovation teaching and teaching innovation in teaching practice, providing relevant reading material about the Norwegian context and other areas of interest, introducing Jenny to research via a survey and analysis of results, drafting, redrafting, structuring, and organizing her assignment. And even though this wasn't part of the initial idea of the IAP, after hearing Jenny's story, that is how COVID-19 put an abrupt end to her exchange, I asked if she was willing to write it up as a blog, which she did. And this became Jenny's COVID story. Since the traditional international alternative practicum option for Queens students is cancelled again in 2021, and for the same reasons, we have an exciting opportunity to offer this supervision exchange to them for a second year. This time to more students, with more of a chance to plan it carefully and intentionally. We are in the process of revising the offer, and based on lessons learned from this first experience, there are some interesting options that we are considering. Number 1, as this is a practicum, we need the classroom to be a part of any future virtual international alternative practicum. Jenny was genuinely interested in discovering the Norwegian context, and even though the Norwegian core curriculum values and principles is riveting reading material, this document analysis does not replace the experience of being in a real classroom with real children and a practicing teacher. So we can do this by providing opportunities for the IAP students to speak with student teachers from Noor, perhaps as part of an interview or a creative component of the project. Another option in this area would be for the IAP students to create their own teaching materials to be used in Norwegian classrooms, and to meet with their Noor supervisor and a Norwegian practicum teacher to reflect on, develop, and adapt these materials. This is an excellent opportunity for intercultural dialogue through materials design. Allowing student teachers to develop a project in pairs is another option. This will enable us to place more students from Queens and to make sure that the process doesn't become too solitary during an already solitary time. And last but not least, we also see this program as an important opportunity for meaningful work concerning the indigenization of education. We hope to connect IAP students, those who are interested in this area of study, with supervisors from our Lule Sami Masters in Education program, and with a network of experts that includes researchers from the Noor Sami Research Group and from the Research Group for Social Justice and Diversity in Education, with local Sami scholars and with educators in Sami communities. The exchange, recognition, and elevation of Indigenous knowledge that this collaboration component will facilitate is essential for the cultivation of culturally and linguistically responsive educators. So, Jenny's story becomes a start of new possibilities in international collaboration, focus on the practicum experience, and supervision exchange.
Though the current global crisis has presented new challenges and postponements, we are still enthusiastic about this partnership and are continuing to find creative solutions to continue our important collaboration work, especially for the indigenization of education. You can follow our project at blog.nord.no/Canopy. Thank you to our hosts, the CBIA, for kindly inviting us to speak about this project. We are very grateful for this occasion to promote and to share our experiences with the project. Thank you very much.